Okay, today, different types of electronic commerce. Pretty easy concept, so we've covered a lot of things in terms of information. Um, Talking about the levels of management and our levels of information and how technology moves information through. So we should understand the relationship between management and information. We make decisions. We talked about these different types of decisions, information systems. The development of information systems. Development of information systems. And the key there, we talked about two different basic types. Top-down development, where we go through all the steps. And then we talked about the life cycle. Comes back up here, and we keep coming up, improving the system and moving down, and eventually when the system has gone through its life cycle, more or less you can improve it or change it, then we create a new one. These life cycles can be very short nowadays because of technology changes how we do that, and companies need to be aware of that all the time so they're not left out. Now, instead of top-down design, you can design what they would call bottom-up. Again, the concept here is you get a prototype developed and you build on that prototype. And we've already talked about why this is advantageous, keeps up with the technology, and also what concerns or issues you have to be aware of bottom up. Right? In terms of accessing that. Alright, so I'll pick up. I had to pause there for a second. I had to plug in the iPad. So we talked about bottom up, and we've already compared those. Top down, bottom up, plus and minuses nowadays, and to be concerned about how technology is affecting your company. Even in terms of marketing, social media is having such an impact nowadays on business. We talked about developing code to solve a problem, and we went through some key terms here in development of software. Can't overemphasize understanding the problem, create all kinds of specifications, design a solution, write the code in some language, test that code, make sure everything's documented, and all software goes through the cycles. Sometimes very quickly, depending on the quality, I guess. And then here we talked about the process. Source code, that's where the term open source comes from. This is what people write. People develop, people write code. You know, software's only as good as the people who design it. Gets compiled in an object code. We link other software together. It's like a good example of this would be like in Windows. When you say save, the code that actually saves, the code that gets it started to tell the operating system to write that to a disk somewheres, okay, that code can be reused in other programs, and those are software libraries. In some Windows are called DLL, Dynamic Link Library. So the object code then can pull everything it needs in a process called linking, and we get an executable code, which is what people actually distribute. They either sell it or get money for it, or they distribute it openly. And we have the whole process, testing, and so forth. Software. Now, finally, the topic for today. This will be very brief. Electronic commerce is huge in our country, in the world. In our country, in the whole world, is just huge. The amount of money that's moved electronically every day. We have e-commerce, business to business, customer to business, customer to customer. There's a lot of talk, peer-to-peer commerce. So it's kind of like going back to the days when we used to barter. Before we had cash, people would just trade items. Okay, I'll give you a basket of wheat if you give me some of that fabric you have, or some of those tools you have. We used to just barter back and forth. We almost do that a little bit again with things like Airbnb. You can say, I'll drive for Airbnb, and you can make some money driving in the city, or you could be a customer. You'll say, I want to use Airbnb, and they take a little money in the middle, and so you're doing like peer-to-peer work. Drive, I didn't mean drive, that would be Uber. Uber would be driving. This would be, you're going to let somebody use your house. Okay? For Airbnb, use your house. Okay, so we have the people that rent, and we have the people that allow you to rent. So it's like peer-to-peer. You know, lots of people sell things online, customer to customer. Customer to business, we do that all the time. You know, we buy items via the internet. Businesses are constantly exchanging between businesses all the time. Kind of issues we rely on the technology. Okay, some people don't like that, but we rely on the technology. We have the whole idea of security and what happens between these things. Okay? Let me slide this up a little bit. Alright, and so, this whole idea of a whole nother currency, and there are some, you know, plus, and there are some minuses, and there are ways to use Bitcoin to trade, you know, just like we used to use something else to trade, except it's all digital money. A lot of interesting things around that. We don't have time here to talk about that. And then the last thing, you do a little research here on paying with your phone. Okay, by smartphones. There's a couple different ways to do that. We have a little article here that helps you through that, but you could basically go in and just wave your phone over the device. Now it's interesting, at least for Apple Pay. Okay, you take your Apple phone, you wave it past the device, and then you use, for some people, you authenticate. You should know what authentication is. You authenticate with your thumb, and what it does then, it allows whoever's buying to take some money out of your account via Apple. So you're not ever exchanging your debit card or any of that stuff. It's a one-time exchange. You wouldn't want to, and you know, you wouldn't want somebody else to have access to it, but it's pretty tough because we're using authentication by something you are, your thumbprint, even though I suppose there might be ways to circumvent that. Anyway, so there's a lot of new ideas in terms of how we pay. Okay? And that's it for today.